I could feel the excitement bubbling inside me, almost like a secret too good to keep. Antony's birthday was just around the corner, and I wanted this year to be different, special, unforgettable. After so many years of routine, I longed to remind him how much joy we could still create together. So, I decided on a surprise party. Not just a simple cake at home, but something bigger, filled with laughter, music, and the people who mattered most to him. I pictured his face when everyone jumped out to shout, "Surprise!" and it made me smile. As I mapped everything out in my head, I realized one person could make it all perfect. John, Antony's best friend. He was like family to us, and involving him would make the whole plan feel natural, like Antony's world had come together just for him. I thought about decorations, playlists from our younger days, and the kind of cake he always pretended not to crave. The more I imagined it, the more I felt certain this was exactly what Antony needed. And truthfully, it was what I needed too. That night, when Antony stepped into the shower and the sound of rushing water filled the room, my heart raced. His phone sat on the nightstand, glowing faintly in the dim light. I don't usually pry, I never had reason to, but this felt harmless, even sweet. Just one small peek, I told myself, only to grab John's number. My hand shook a little as I opened his contacts and scrolled until I saw the name, John. Relief and pride washed over me when I copied the number into my own phone, convinced I was laying the first brick in a memory Antony would never forget. I slipped my phone back into my pocket just as Antony's footsteps echoed closer, the shower turning off in the background. My heart thudded like I'd done something scandalous, though it was nothing but a simple number. Still, there was a thrill in keeping the secret tucked away. I forced a calm smile when he walked into the room, towel around his waist, as if I'd just been scrolling through my emails. Inside, though, I was giddy, rehearsing every detail of the surprise in my head. That night, I could hardly sleep. I lay awake picturing the moment, the lights low, the room silent before the crowd jumped out. His laughter, that boyish grin of his, the way he'd wrap me in his arms and whisper, "How did you pull this off?" Just imagining it filled me with warmth. After all these years, I wanted to prove to him, and maybe even to myself, that love could still feel fresh and electric. Planning this party felt like reigniting something we'd let fade in the daily grind. By the next morning, my anticipation had grown into full-blown excitement. I went about my day with a secret tucked in my chest, a tiny flame that made even mundane tasks feel charged with purpose. Every time Antony texted me something ordinary, "Don't forget the dry cleaning," or "What's for dinner?" I smiled to myself, knowing I was planning something extraordinary. Tomorrow, during my lunch break, I'd call John. He'd be the first to hear about my plan, and with his help, the party would be perfect. At least that's what I believed. The following day couldn't come fast enough. I sat through meetings, answered emails, and smiled politely at coworkers, all the while keeping my secret close to my heart. When the clock finally struck noon, I slipped out with my phone in hand, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. This was it, the moment I'd finally share my idea with John. I imagined his chuckle, his enthusiasm, maybe even his suggestions to make the night unforgettable. I found a quiet spot outside, away from the office chatter and clinking coffee cups. The sun was warm on my skin, and for a moment, I felt like a teenager again, plotting something daring and sweet. I unlocked my phone, my fingers hovering over the number I'd saved. My pulse quickened as I pressed call, rehearsing what I'd say. "Hey John, it's Victoria. I need your help planning something for Antony." I could almost hear the surprise in his voice already. As the ringing buzzed in my ear, I smiled to myself, ready to set this plan in motion. This was supposed to be the first step toward the perfect birthday surprise. Little did I know, the voice on the other end would shatter everything I thought I knew, and take me down a path I never expected to walk. The line clicked, and instead of John's familiar tone, a woman's voice floated through. "Hello, this is Anna. Who's speaking?" My stomach tightened instantly. I pulled the phone slightly away from my ear, staring at the screen as if it might explain what was happening. Had I dialed wrong? No, it was the number I'd copied from Antony's phone, clear as day. Confused, I steadied my voice and asked, "Isn't this John's number?" There was a pause, one heavy enough to make my skin prickle. Then the woman answered, firmer this time, "No, there's no John here." "Who are you trying to reach?" Her words cut sharper than they should have, slicing through my excitement like glass. My heart pounded, loud enough I was sure she could hear it through the line. My mind scrambled, flipping through possibilities. Maybe Anthony had typed the number wrong. Maybe John had changed his phone. But something about her tone unsettled me deeply. I stammered out a quick apology, my throat suddenly dry. "Oh, I'm sorry, I must have dialed the wrong number," I said, trying to sound casual. But when I ended the call, my hand lingered on the phone, frozen. My pulse still hammered, and unease spread through me like a slow-moving shadow. If that number wasn't John's, then why was it saved under his name in Anthony's phone? That question lodged itself in my chest, refusing to let go. I sat there in the quiet corner of the courtyard, staring at my phone like it had betrayed me. The air felt thicker, heavier, and the chatter of co-workers around me blurred into meaningless noise. My fingers tightened around the device, and a chill ran down my spine. Why would Anthony save a woman's number under John's name? The question burned in my mind, refusing to be brushed aside. Something didn't fit, and the unease in my chest only grew sharper. I replayed the voice in my head, steady, confident, almost territorial. Anna, that's what she called herself. Her tone wasn't the kind of polite correction you'd expect from a stranger. It was defensive, like she knew exactly who I was and wanted to push me back. My heart sank further with each thought. What reason would Anthony have to hide Anna behind John's name, unless there was something to hide? My pulse drummed at the possibility I didn't dare name. I shoved my phone back into my bag and tried to breathe, but the weight of suspicion pressed harder with every inhale. I told myself I was being ridiculous, letting my imagination run wild. Anthony loved me. He had to. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a simple mistake. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. And now, no matter how much I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't unhear Anna's voice. The rest of the afternoon dragged on like an eternity. I pretended to focus on work, nodding in meetings, typing emails, but my mind wasn't there. It kept circling back to that call, to the firmness in Anna's voice and the lie tucked neatly into Anthony's phone. Every time I thought of it, a knot tightened in my stomach, leaving me restless and distracted. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something dangerous, teetering between denial and truth. By the time I drove home, I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. I kept replaying scenarios in my head. Maybe it was a simple misunderstanding. Maybe Anthony had some explanation that would erase this dark cloud. Yet the deeper I dug into my own thoughts, the more hollow those excuses sounded. Love had always been built on trust, but now a tiny crack had formed, and I was terrified it would split wide open. When I walked through the door, Anthony greeted me with his usual warmth, as if nothing was wrong. His smile should have comforted me, but instead it made me uneasy. I studied him closely, noticing every glance, every movement, wondering if there was something he wasn't saying. My lips curled into a practiced smile, but inside, I was already bracing myself. Something had shifted, and I knew I couldn't ignore it. Tomorrow, I'd start looking closer. That evening, I found myself watching Anthony more carefully than ever. The way he lingered on his phone, angling the screen away as if shielding it from me. The casual excuses for his late nights at work that suddenly felt rehearsed. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, but Anna's voice echoed in my mind, fueling a suspicion I couldn't silence. Every glance he stole at his phone was like a whisper I wasn't meant to hear. I remembered the days when Anthony used to leave his phone lying around without a second thought, when laughter and openness filled our evenings. Now there was a distance, invisible but heavy, as if we were both playing roles in a play neither of us had auditioned for. I smiled, asked about his day, and nodded at his replies, but inside I was replaying every small change I'd ignored. Had this been building for weeks? Months? After dinner, when he stepped out of the room, I felt my pulse quicken. I walked past his phone, the device that suddenly felt like a stranger between us. I hesitated, fighting the war between trust and doubt. But Anna's voice, that simple, hello, had already shifted the balance. I knew I couldn't keep pretending nothing had changed. With trembling hands, I decided it was time to look closer, time to search for the truth that had been hiding in plain sight. I unlocked his phone with a mixture of guilt and determination, my heart pounding so hard it almost drowned out my thoughts. I went straight to the call logs first. There it was, late-night conversations with John. Too many of them, stretching past midnight, sometimes lasting an hour or more. My chest tightened as I scrolled down, each line of history feeling like a brick added to the weight crushing me. This wasn't friendship. This wasn't casual. Next, I opened the messages. At first, they seemed harmless, short exchanges, inside jokes. But the more I read, the clearer it became. The tone was different, layered with intimacy. Words laced with warmth, longing, tenderness. Phrases no man should write to another man, no husband should send while lying next to his wife. I felt my throat close, tears stinging as I forced myself to keep reading, even though every word tore at me. In that moment, the truth crystallized in front of me. John wasn't real. He was nothing more than a mask, a disguise Antony used to hide her. Anna. The voice that had unsettled me was suddenly everywhere, in every affectionate word he'd written. My knees felt weak as I set the phone down, a sharp ache hollowing my chest. I whispered to myself, barely audible, "He's been with her, all along." I sat there in silence, the glow of the screen painting my face while the rest of the house felt unbearably quiet. My hands trembled as I tried to process what I had just uncovered. Every memory of Antony telling me he was working late, every half-smile when he brushed off my questions, it all snapped into place. The betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It had a name, a voice, and now, undeniable proof. My mind reeled back through our years together, the sacrifices, the small moments I had treasured. Had all of that meant so little to him? The thought made my chest ache, as if the floor had been pulled from under me. I wanted to scream, cry, collapse, but instead I sat frozen, my breath shallow and uneven. The trust I had once taken for granted now lay shattered, scattered into pieces too sharp to touch. Still, beneath the heartbreak, something else began to stir. A fire, quiet but fierce, fueled by anger and the need for answers. I wiped at the tears blurring my vision and took a steadying breath. If Antony thought he could weave a lie this deep and walk away untouched, he was mistaken. I wasn't going to crumble. Not yet. I was going to confront this, no matter how much it burned. The rage simmered inside me all night, keeping me awake as Antony slept soundly beside me, unaware of the storm building inches away. I stared at the ceiling, my mind rehearsing what I would say, how I would strip away every excuse before he even had the chance to open his mouth. I wasn't going to ask gently. I wasn't going to beg for honesty. I wanted the truth exposed, raw and undeniable, right in front of him. By morning, my decision was clear. I waited, patient as a predator, until the perfect moment presented itself. Antony, careless as ever, left his phone unattended on the counter while he grabbed something from the garage. My pulse spiked, my hands steadied, and I knew this was it. No more hiding, no more second-guessing. I picked up the phone, found Anna's number, still disguised under John's name, and pressed call. When she answered with a soft, almost dreamy, "Hi, love," my heart twisted, but I didn't hesitate. I put the call on speaker and spoke her name calmly, firmly. Anna. The sound of my voice must have pierced through her haze because she froze instantly, silence filling the line. At the same time, I turned toward Antony, watching the color drain from his face as his entire double life collapsed in front of me. Antony's lips parted, but no words came out, only a stammer, a hollow gasp, like he'd been punched in the gut. I held his gaze, my hand steady on the phone as Anna's silence stretched across the speaker. The weight of truth filled the room, thick and undeniable. For a moment, no one moved. Then, with a voice I barely recognized as my own, I let everything spill out. Rage, betrayal, heartbreak. Each word cracked like a whip, cutting through the flimsy lies he might have tried to spin. "You thought you could hide her behind John's name? You thought I'd never find out? My voice shook, not from weakness, but from the sheer force of the emotions tearing through me. Anthony tried to reach for the phone, his face pale, sweat glistening at his temples. But I pulled back, holding it high, daring him to listen to his own deceit. I wanted him to feel it, the shame, the exposure, the raw ugliness of what he'd done. Anna finally muttered something, my name, maybe, or a plea, but I ended the call before her voice could soften the blow. This wasn't about her. This was about him, the man who vowed to honor me, to protect me, and instead chose to bury our marriage under a pile of lies. Anthony opened his mouth again, but I cut him off with a scream that carried every ounce of betrayal lodged in my chest. For the first time, he had nowhere to run. My voice filled the room, echoing off the walls, raw and unrelenting. Years of quiet trust, of brushing aside doubts, came crashing down in a storm of fury. Anthony stood frozen, his mouth moving without sound, like a man drowning. He had always been so composed, so certain, but now, stripped bare, he was nothing more than a coward exposed. I wanted him to see what he had turned me into, a woman forced to fight for her own truth. I hurled questions at him, each one sharper than the last. How long has this been going on? Was every late night with her? Did you ever even love me? Or was it all a convenient lie? My chest heaved, tears burning my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. This wasn't a moment for weakness. I wanted my pain to be a mirror, forcing him to look at the destruction he'd caused. And in his silence, I found my answer. Finally, I let the phone drop onto the counter with a sharp thud, the sound final, like a gavel ending a trial. He flinched, but I stood my ground, breathing hard, fire still coursing through me. There was no apology that could erase what I'd heard, no excuse that could stitch back the trust he'd shredded. Anthony had thought he could bury his betrayal in shadows, but I had dragged it into the light, and once seen, it could never be unseen. The very next morning, I sat in my lawyer's office, the weight of betrayal still pressing against my chest, but now sharpened into resolve. I handed over Anthony's phone records, the messages, the proof of the false contact. My lawyer nodded slowly, flipping through the pages like a surgeon preparing for delicate but decisive work. With the no infidelity clause in your prenuptial agreement, she said, her voice calm, this gives you everything you need. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of power return to me. Walking out of that office, I breathed deeper than I had in weeks. The city noise surrounded me, but inside, I carried only one thought. Anthony had underestimated me. He believed his lies were clever enough, his disguise secure enough, but the number he used to shield his affair had become the very key to his undoing. I almost laughed at the irony of it. The same secret he thought would protect him had handed me my freedom. That night, I didn't bother confronting him again. I didn't need his apologies or explanations anymore. The papers were in motion, the truth was mine to wield, and soon he'd have to face consequences that no sweet words could soften. For once I felt steady, standing in the ashes of what he had burned, knowing I was the one holding the match that would finish it. It didn't take long for the tide to turn. Within weeks, Anthony was forced to pack his things, his pride crumbling right alongside the life he thought he controlled. Watching him leave our home, the one I had poured my heart into, was strangely liberating. There were no tears left in me, only a quiet strength that kept me standing tall. Anna, the woman he had risked everything for, vanished the moment his money and stability disappeared. His betrayal had not only destroyed our marriage but left him with nothing to cling to. I, on the other hand, discovered a fire inside me I hadn't felt in years. Friends rallied around me. Family offered support I hadn't even realized I needed. For once, I wasn't the woman who sacrificed or compromised. I was the woman who reclaimed everything owed to her. The no infidelity clause didn't just protect me, it empowered me. Every step I took from that moment forward was lighter, freer, like I had finally unshackled myself from a prison I hadn't known I was in. Anthony's absence didn't leave me hollow. It left me space. Space to breathe, to laugh, to rebuild. Space to fill with people who actually cherished me. And as I looked at the empty side of the bed that night, I didn't feel the ache of loss. I felt relief, pure and steady, knowing I had traded lies for truth, weakness for strength. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something entirely mine. Instead of planning Antony's birthday party, I hosted a celebration of my own. The house, once heavy with secrets, filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the warmth of people who had stood by me through the storm. I raised a glass, my smile genuine, my heart finally steady. "To new beginnings," I said, and the cheer that followed wrapped around me like a promise. This was no longer Antony's house, Antony's life. It was mine. As the night unfolded, I noticed how different it felt to stand in a room without the weight of pretending. Every hug from a friend, every shared story, reminded me that love didn't have to be begged for or hidden behind lies. Love, real love, was honest, loud, and proud. I let myself soak in the joy, realizing that while Antony had lost everything, I had found more than I imagined: freedom, dignity, and a future untainted by betrayal. When the last guests left and the lights dimmed, I stood alone in the living room, the echoes of laughter still lingering in the air. I thought of the number that had started it all, the one he thought would shield his affair. That single misstep had led me here, to this moment of strength. Antony's downfall had become my rebirth, and I swore to myself I'd never again let anyone dim the fire inside me.